Hey, what is going on, guys? It's DK. Back at you with another video here. It's running the Thursday Night Showdown slate between the Jaguars and the Dolphins. Before I get into the video, if you guys are new to the channel, my name is DK. I make daily videos breaking down NBA, NFL, PGA, and esports daily fantasy sports slates. I do want to say thank you guys again for all the support. Seriously, closing in on 5K subs, currently at 4.99 thousand subscribers. If you guys are watching the channel, you enjoy the videos, and you're not yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. Also, leave a like button and hit the notification bell so you know when I upload videos, you know when I go live. Would greatly appreciate that. Also, if you guys cannot watch YouTube videos, I do upload an Apple Podcast. The link is in the description below, which is the DK DFS show. But with that all out of the way, let's jump into the video. So before we talk about players and their prices for the Showdown slate, let's quickly look back at my lineup here from Monday night's Showdown slate. So Monday night, Emmanuel Sanders, I got to take the L there. Big L for sure. He was a guy that I really liked with no Michael Thomas and had a donut basically the entire game. Had one catch in garbage time. That was it. Really surprised me. I told you guys in the live stream, if you guys checked out the live stream on Monday, that it was Kamara, it was Waller, and it was Sanders, the guys that I was considering for the captain spot. Obviously, I picked the worst of the bunch, right? Because Kamara went crazy. Same with Darren Waller. The reason why I like Sanders in that price range was you had Josh Jacobs for a little bit more. I knew he was going to be popular. I told you guys I was fading him. I did. I thought it was a nice leverage spot because I knew, obviously Kamara was going to be high on no matter what the price. I just knew he was going to be popular. And I knew Josh Jacobs was too. So, and the quarterbacks always get ownership, obviously, on these showdown sites. So there wasn't a lot of salary left over for people to get to Sanders. So I thought it was a nice leverage spot, him being the number one receiver. I know he's getting up there in age and didn't look great, so that's just one I got to take the L on. The two value plays I went with Bryan Edwards, Deontay Harris are actually solid. The Raiders use a lot of different receivers. That was the downside there. Zay Jones caught a touchdown. And then Deontay Harris was the number 3. We kind of got clarity of that before lock from the Saints beat writer. I retweeted that as well. So it's always important. It's also important to follow me on Twitter, guys. I will kind of give my thoughts and retweet relevant information for slates like that. When it's available. So, yeah, that's a look back again. Obviously, Waller, Kamara went off. Breeze versus Carr. I could have went both, right? The optimal was to play both quarterbacks, but I was willing to take the shot in Sanders, and it didn't work out for me. But, that's the single entry life, right? You got to take risks, you got to take stands sometimes, and that's a look back. So, enough of that. Let's take a look at the Vegas odds for this game. We have Jags, we have Dolphins, the 48 over under, a 3-point favorite. The Jags are 3-point favorites. So, two not so good teams going up against each other, but neither team's really good defensively, and both offenses are okay, right? So, there's definitely a possibility this game could turn into a shootout. Before we talk about the prices for these players, let's take a look at the snap counts, and I'm going to look at week 2. You can definitely, if you wanted to, you can take a look at, both week 1 and week 2, but I'm going to focus more on week 2 just because obviously that was the most recent week. So let's take a look at Jacksonville first. The running back situation, well, Robinson played 51% of the snaps. Chris Thompson played 41%. Clearly, Robinson is the 1 and 2 guy, right? He can even catch some passes. We've seen it the last couple weeks, whereas Chris Thompson is more their third down back, out there more for his pass catching ability. The wide receivers for the Jags, Chark is their number 1. He played about 80% of the snaps. Keelan Cole about 70%. Chenault, I should probably have looked up how to pronounce that name. I think it's Chenault. Played about 60% of the snaps. And Chris Conley about 50%. So really they utilized 4 receivers. Johnson did play a few snaps, but that's more of just, in territory of like a dart throw. Well, but we did see last slate, right? Zay Jones was the dart throw. Also, I forget that tight end, like the 4-string tight end for the Raiders, caught a touchdown as well. So, if you're making, again, those are more plays that if you're making a lot of lines you can consider, but like for single entry, like myself, I don't really consider those guys. Tight end situation for the Jags, Eifert is their number 1. He's their best pass-catching tight end. He played in 60% of the snaps last game. They did utilize some other tight ends, though. O'Shaughnessy played about 50% of the snaps. Ellis Ellenson played 23%, with Davis missing that last game. For the Dolphins, let's take a look at the running back situation. It's really interesting. People thought it was going to be Howard and Breida this year, kind of, as the 1 and 2. It's been Myles Gaskin, and he's really took over. He played over 60% of snaps in week 1. Again, over 60% in week 2. Jordan Howard's snaps are way down on him. I have no interest in him in this slate. Breida played 21%. It's more just in dart throw territory. Patrick Laird did play a couple snaps, but not really consider him. So Gaskin is right now Miami's workhorse back. As far as the wide receivers go, Devontae Parker played almost 90% of the snaps, dealing with a hamstring injury, but looks like he was pretty good, right? Playing basically the entire game. Preston Williams, 81%, and Isaiah Ford coming in at 64%. Jakeem Grant picked up 13% of the snaps there in week 2, so super risky play if you are going to consider him. Lastly, the tight end situation here for the Dolphins. Gesicki is obviously their number 1 tight end. He is their pass-catching tight end. He had a really good week last week. Did only play in 55% of the snaps. Does that worry me? Not a whole lot, because when he's out there, he's running routes, right, and they're gonna look to him. He's obviously a target in the red zone. Smythe played almost 50% of the snaps, and then Shaheen played about 23%. So I always think it's good to kind of just go over the snap counts in the previous game. For these showdown sites, kind of get a good gauge of who's going to be out there and who are guys you can really consider, and who are those guys that are more just in territory for like a dart throw, right? So we'll start. I'm just going to start at the top and go down to the bottom. Both quarterbacks at the top here, Minshew and Fitzpatrick. If you're playing a cash game setting, if you're playing cash games 50-50s head-to-heads on the showdown slate, just do this, right? You just play both quarterbacks and move on. They have the highest floor. This is a game that definitely can shoot out, right? Both defenses aren't great, so that's how I would start my cash game lineup. You just play both quarterbacks. Now, do you have to play them both in GPPs? No, right? They have been in the winning lineup last couple of showdown slates, but it's not always necessary. They are the safest options, though, just because, like I mentioned, they're going to have the highest floor. Minshew's a guy that can get it down a little bit on the ground. Fitzpatrick getting up there in age, but he's still been a solid quarterback. So, if you're going to make me pick between Minshew versus Fitzpatrick, I'll slightly give the edge to Minshew. But again, not a real strong take. And if you are playing those head-to-heads, those 50-50s, where you just need to beat 50% of the field, I think you just play both quarterbacks. They are very safe. Again, if you're going to make me pick, I think it's Minshew. Can you fade both? It's super risky. Rarely works out. But if your guy's making a ton of lineups, possible. Right, what you would really need there is basically most of the touchdowns scored on the ground, which is, again, not out of the realm of possibilities, but it's a super risky build if you do fade both quarterbacks. So the next highest priced guys are the number 1 receivers for both teams. They're good receivers, no doubt about it, but they shouldn't be the number 1 on a team, right? So like Chark is 9.4K. It's a decent start to the season, not great, right? Only 4 and 3 targets is a little bit worrisome. Dealing with the chest injury, he was limited practice. I think he'll be good to go. Devontae Parker's been dealing with a hamstring injury. He had 8 targets last game. Also a guy that does have that big play upside, and since he played almost 90% of the snaps, doesn't worry me too much with his hamstring injury, but it's obviously in the back of my mind. Yeah, I don't think either are must plays here. Normally guys priced this far up are guys that have like enormous upside and really safe. I don't know if that's necessarily the case with Chark and Parker. Like, they're perfectly fine plays. They're going to pick up ownership because, honestly, it's a little bit tricky to use all your salary. I think it is. I think, this slate is really interesting because there's a lot of viable cheap options. I think leaving salary on the table is a really interesting strategy on this slate. I think it's certainly doable on this slate more than others because there's a lot of cheap options that are certainly in play, right? And it's not like this is not like Michael Thomas is the number 1 receiver or Julio Jones, right? It's Chark and it's Parker. So you don't have to play these guys. They probably do have the most upside, but there's a lot of guys cheaper that I think have almost similar upside and are again a lot cheaper. So with Parker, with Chark, who do I prefer? Not a real strong take. I'll slightly give that to Devontae Parker just because the targets have blown a higher on him. But again, he's about $1,000 cheaper. So give me Parker if you can make me pick. But both guys are definitely in play here. Robinson at 7.8. So he's actually been really solid. That last game against Tennessee had over 100 yards. He's been involved in the passing game a bit. You are going to have to pay a premium for him at almost $8K, but I think he's someone that if you think that the Jags are playing from ahead, then I think he looks really good. Now, if you think the Jags are playing from behind this one, then a guy like Chris Thompson looks a lot more viable, right? So always build your lineups or your lineup if you're a single entry guy like myself with how you think the game is going to play out. If you think the Jags are playing from ahead, I think Robinson looks a really solid play here. If you think they're trailing, I think Chris Thompson looks like a nice value play. Mike Gesicki at 7.4. Again, he had a great week last week. 8 catches, 11 targets, 130 yards, and a touchdown. I think his ownership is going to be pretty high. It always seems to be the case in the showdown sites if a guy had a big game, like his ownership is just going to jump. So at 7.4, he's certainly playable here. But if I get the feeling that I think he's going to be like if I think he's going to be like really popular, then I might look elsewhere. And that's what makes the game theory aspect of the showdown site really interesting. Like I said, there's a lot of different ways you can go, a lot of cheap options we'll get to in a sec that I think it's possible to leave salary on the table. But yeah, Gesicki, what you know from him is when he's out there, he's going to be running routes. They're going to target him. So 7.4, certainly in play. They're more in the mid-range. Myles Gaskin, again, surprisingly, has been, kind of their workhorse back. He's played on over 60% of the snaps in both weeks so far. Jordan Howard kind of getting phased out. Breida not playing a whole lot. They still will give those guys some touches, but Gaskin is the clear number one. Now, like I said with James Robinson, you're not really getting a discount on him at 7.2, but the good thing with Myles Gaskin is he's a really good pass-catching back. 4 catches and 6 catches on 4 and 7 targets the first couple weeks is good to see. So, both running backs are definitely playable. The quarterbacks and the running backs, if you're building that cash team lineup, have the highest floor. So if you are playing 50-50s, head-to-heads, maybe something like both quarterbacks and one of those running backs. You can play both running backs too. But like I said with Parker, like I said with Chark, this is not like Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara, right? Like Robinson and Gaskin are talented, but they're not to the level of some of these elite backs. So don't think they're necessarily must plays, right? Let's see. All right, so Preston Williams at 6.8. He had a really, really good year one there. So far this year hasn't been great. Only 1 and 2 catches so far in the first couple of weeks, but the targets have been there. 5 and 7 targets. So, and the 6.8K price point, he intrigues me because he's going to go low owned, right? People are going to look at the box score, see 6 and see 5 fancy points, and kind of avoid him. I think people are going to use most, if not all, their salaries. So Chark's going to be popular, Parker's going to be popular. And I'm not saying they're bad plays. It's just the game theory aspect. Like Preston Williams, kind of in this mid range, I think goes a little bit lower owned. But he's a guy that has upside. Like we saw it the last year. He's a big body receiver too. They can go to him in the red zone. So I kind of like Preston Williams as a buy low candidate here. Obviously, if something happens to Devontae Parker and his hamstring, that would be a bigger boost to Preston Williams. So I kind of like him because I know he's going to be lower owned on this slate, and he does have the upside. We haven't seen him yet this year. We saw it a lot last year. It's definitely there for him. So kind of like a buy low candidate there. Chenault, the rookie at 6'6", he's an interesting play because he'll get utilized a decent amount through the air, and he'll also take some carries too, right? So his box score so far, 3 catches both weeks, also 2 and 5 attempts on the ground. So he's kind of a do-it-all guy for Jacksonville, and where's Jacksonville? He played in almost 60% of the snaps. That's decent, right? He's a guy that they clearly want to get the ball to him. So another guy in the mid-range, I think has a lot of upside. and maybe won't get as much ownership as some of those guys near the top. Now, with the defenses on this slate, we have the Jags at 6-4. It's just tough. Like, if they were like 4K, there'd be a lot more playable. 6.4K just feels like a lot to pay for a defense. I really think you need like a pick 6 or something. So, as like a single entry guy, I'm not going to consider him. Obviously, you're making multiple lineups, you can go there. Tyler Eifert's at 5'8". Hasn't been great so far. Did have it 1 touchdown last week, 3 catches and 6 targets. But another guy that the upside is there. He's a guy that can look to in the red zone. The 5.8K price point, a very, very fair price. So, don't rule out Tyler Eifert. We haven't really seen a huge game from him, but I still think it's there on him. Keelan Cole at 5'4". I like a good amount. I think it's a really, really solid play for a guy that is currently playing, about 70% of snaps. He is, right now, again, their number 2 receiver. He's had really good weeks, both weeks so far. 5 catches on 5 targets, 6 catches on 7 targets, touchdown in both weeks. The 5.4K price is really nice. Now, I think he is going to be popular, right? Because the box score watchers, 15 and 17 fantasy points. So, yes, I think Keelan Cole's safe. Yes, for cash games, probably would play him. But another guy that I have a feeling, I think the ownership's going to be pretty high in him. So, there's definitely ways to get to pivot on this slate. There's a lot of viable options. Both teams spread the ball out a lot. So, that's why I think it's a really interesting slate. Now, Jordan Howard at 4'8", cross off. I know he's had a touchdown in the first couple of weeks, but he's not going to utilize at all through the air. The snaps went way down on him. Like if he was like 1K, then he would be in consideration, but I'm just not paying almost 5K for Jordan Howard here. I'll be avoiding him. Both kickers, I always mentioned they're playable. For a GPP lineup, I think you can include one. I don't think I'd consider both for a GPP lineup. With Lambo and Sanders. Lambo dealing with, a hip injury, so that's obviously something to keep an eye on. But, kickers have upside. They can get you 10 to 15 fantasy points. So they're always in play. There's not a real strong take. It's just if they fit in and you want to go kicker, perfectly fine. The Dolphins defense, they're a little bit more playable because of the price, but still don't know if I'm going to pull the trigger on them for my single entry showdown lineup. So, yeah, again, multiple lineups you can consider them, but for the single entry guys like myself, probably not going to go there. Isaiah Ford at 3K. I think it looks like a really nice value here. He played on 65% of the snaps. He's a guy that has the speed. He has the big play upside. 5 and 9 targets the first couple weeks. So clearly this is the guy that the Dolphins feel comfortable giving targets to. They're running him out there a lot. 2 and 7 catches. The 3K price is really cheap. So I like Isaiah Ford a good amount. I definitely think he's one of the better value plays here of the day. And I also like Chris Thompson at 2.6. The box score watchers might avoid him, but I think he's a pretty solid play here. And like I said, if you think the Jags fall behind, Chris Thompson is your guy. The 2.6K price is really, really cheap. We've seen huge games from Chris Thompson in the past from Washington. We haven't seen it yet this year for the Jags, but it's there. The upside is there. He's a great pass-catching back, and if they do fall behind a touchdown or 2 touchdowns, he is a guy that I think could definitely crush his salary. So like I said, it's all about how you think the game plays out. Chris Conley at 2.2, definitely viable. He had 7 targets last week. How many snaps did he play again? He played almost 50% of snaps. So, like I said, both teams spread the ball out a lot. That's why I think it's really interesting. There's a lot of different ways you can go. Conley certainly playable here. Again, 7 targets is good to see. Only 1 target last week, but at 2.2K, he doesn't have to do a whole lot to get you there. Burita, this is now more into dart throw territory. He's a decent pass-catching back, but the snaps are going down on him. He played 20% of the snaps last week, but all he really needs is to get an end zone once, obviously, and he pays off value or catch like a couple passes. So a riskier play, but like I said, viable on the slate. O'Shaughnessy, kind of the same thing. We're in dart throw territory, but he played a decent amount of snaps. He had 4 catches last week. He's at below 2K, playable. Jakeem Grant at 1.4K. The snaps went down on him. He only played 13%, but if something happens to Parker, or if Parker surprisingly gets ruled out in this one, then he would look a lot more viable here. Another guy that has speed, has big play upside, but right now just more in that territory for dart throws. Shaheen, kind of the same thing, right? Johnson did play few a few snaps to have 3 targets, but nothing I can really recommend with confidence. Again, like 150 lineup guys, you can consider these guys below here, but for single entry, they're super, super risky. Same thing with Smythe, right? He played a few snaps there last game. Ellefson as well. All right, but I think that's really it for like the player-by-player breakdown. As far as captains go, if you're going a quarterback and captain, make sure you get correlations. If you're going Minshew, make sure you play. I would play at least 2 of the receivers there. Obviously, you can throw like Chris Thompson there too, since he's a really good pass-catching back. Same thing with FITZPATRICK, right? If you're going him in the captain spot, then make sure you get correlation. Make sure I would probably play at least 2 of the Miami receivers. For GPP winning upsides, I think it's like 75% of the time it's either a running back or wide receiver. So if you're going for that GPP winning upside, I think targeting, again, either the wide receivers or the running backs in the captain spot is the way to go. Like I said, quarterbacks can definitely get you there, but they're rarely in the GPP winning winning lineup in the captain. They have the highest floor, but they're not in the captain spot in the GPP winning lineup most of the time. Like I said, it's either wide receiver or running back. Who are players I'm considering? Well, there's a lot, right? Both teams spread the ball out a lot. Like, if you want to go Chark or Parker at the top, that's fine. Jasecki's a big body receiver they can go to. Chenault's a guy they'll utilize through the air and on the ground. I think he's an interesting play. Preston Williams, a kind of buy low candidate, right? Hasn't really been great so far, but the upside is there, and they can go to him in the red zone. Eifert, don't mind him. Right, Keelan Cole is at a really cheap price point. I think he's going to be popular, but for like a cash game setting, I think he looks good. Isaiah Ford is super, super cheap. The big play upside is there. And then like we're getting to riskier plays now, like Chris Thompson. If you think the Jags fall behind, he's a guy that has a lot of upside because he's a great pass-catching back. So that's probably the guys I would consider in the captain spot if you're shooting for that upside. But yeah, I think that's really going to do it for the video today, guys. I will be live streaming for this, the Thursday Night Football slate, probably 30 minutes before lock on my YouTube channel, going over everything and then answering any questions you guys have at the end. So if say we get like Chark or Parker rule out, I'll talk about that a little bit more. So make sure you guys check out the live stream Thursday before lock. Thanks again, guys. I hope you guys all have a good day, and I will see you all Thursday in the live stream.